Okay, today we're going to talk about slope, forms of a line, parallel and perpendicular lines. Slope is the growth or the rise over run or the rate of change. The formula is m equals y of 2 minus y of 1 over x of 2 minus x of 1. Now, you can do the equation m is equal to y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. As long as you're consistent in that you take the same one from this, that you take the x and the y from the same point in the same order. Okay? Now, to find the slope, and we have 2 points, you call it one x1 and y1 and one x2 and y2. Then, if I take this formula, it would be 2 minus 6 over negative 2 minus 3. That would be negative 4 over negative 5, which is 4/5. If I took this formula, it would be 6 minus 2 over 3 minus negative 2, add a line, gives me 4 over 5. So as you can see, it makes no difference as long as you are consistent. Okay, you have to be consistent. If you change it up, it's not going to work. And make sure you put the y's on the top and the x's on the bottom. So 12 minus 3 over 3 minus 0, 9 over 3, 3. x1, y1, x2, y2. 2 minus 2 over 3 minus negative 3 minus 3. 0 over negative 6. Well, 0 over negative 6 is 0. What that tells you is that this is going to be a horizontal line, and it has a slope of 0. Now I want to add one more for you. Let's say we had 4, negative 2, 4, 7. So 7 minus negative 2 over 4 minus 4. 9 over 0. Well, 9 over 0 is not 0. In fact, if you put 9 over 0 in your calculator, it's going to say non-real answer or undefined. This is, you can either write no slope, you can write undefined, because this is a vertical line, meaning that it goes straight up. So there is no slope on it because there's no run on it, and you cannot have a 0 on the bottom. So there are the two things that can happen. You can get a 0 slope, which means it's a horizontal line, or you can get a no slope or an undefined slope, which is a vertical line. Other than that, you will get a slope, a rise over run. Now, positive slopes lean to the right, and negative slopes lean to the left. So if you know you're supposed to be graphing a positive slope, your graph better be leaning to the right. Okay, and if you know you're going to be graphing a negative slope, you should be looking at a line that leans to the left. If that's not happening, then you need to recheck yourself. A road rise is 15 for every horizontal distance of 250. So a rise is 15, goes horizontally 250. 15 over 250. Now, that is not reduced. So you want to make sure that you reduce it, and you want to put it in a fraction. The reason you want to put in a fraction is so that you have your rise over your run. So we have 3 over 50. A 2-minute phone call costs 34 cents, and a 6-minute phone call costs 62 cents. What is the slope or the growth per minute? So what I did is I took the 2 minutes and the 34 and I put them as a point. And I took the 6 minutes and the 62 and I put it as a point. Now I have an x1, y1, x2, y2. Now remember, slope is also growth. So when they ask for the growth, what they're actually asking for is your slope. So 62 minus 34 over 6 minus 2. 62 minus 34 is 28 over 4, which is 7. Okay? And this was minutes, cents, so it's cents per minute, because x is one on the bottom. So there's a 7 cents per minute increase or growth. Now, y equals mx plus b is what's called slope-intercept form. M is the slope and b is the y-intercept. It's used when you know the slope or the growth and the y-intercept or the starting point. So when I start with this one, this is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is always in the form of 0 and then some number. Okay, so that's my y-intercept. And I have a slope of 1/4. So y is equal to 1/4, that goes where the m is, x minus 3. Now how to graph it. What you do when you graph it is you start at the y-intercept. That is your starting point. That's another reason why it's called your starting point. And it says to go to -3 and you put a dot. Then you go over to your slope, and your slope tells you your rise over your run. So from your starting point, I need to rise 1 and run 4. Now notice it's a positive slope, so it should be leaning to the right, and mine is leaning to the right. And then I can graph my line. So you're going to put on your point on your y-intercept as your value of b, and then you're going to do your rise and run according to your numerator and denominator of your m. So let's practice a little more. I'm going to start at -2 on the y. I'm going to rise 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to run 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now look, I'm leaning to the right. It is a positive slope, so I should be leaning to the right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So before I draw the line, I want to make sure that I'm leaning in the right direction. Now, this one doesn't look exactly the same as this one. It's just flipped over, so we're just going to flip it back. This starts at +1 on the y, and this doesn't look like it has a rise over run, but if I put a 1 under it, I now have a rise over run. I'm going to rise 1, 2, 3, 4, and run 1. It's a positive slope, so I should be leaning to the right. Now let's say I have a negative slope. Y is equal to -2/3 x plus 2. Well, let's start at +2. And this tells me to drop 2 and go right 3. As you can see, my line is now leaning to the left. So I'm doing good. I know it's leaning to the left, and I'm double checking myself. Okay, what if the equation is not in slope-intercept form? It's in standard form. First thing you have to do is get the y by itself on the left-hand side. Get the y on the left-hand side. Then you want to move everything away except the y term to the right-hand side. Then you'll divide by the coefficient in front of y, and now you should have y equals mx plus b form. So let's practice. The y is already on the left-hand side, so the next thing I have to do is move everything away that doesn't have a y in it, in the term. And when I move an x from one side to the other, if it was positive, it becomes negative. Then I divide by the coefficient in front of y, which is -3. This goes away, and y equals. Now, you're probably wondering, what do I do with this? Well, remember, this has a 1 in front of it, so -1 over -3 is 1/3 x. 9 over -3 is -3. I can now graph this by going to -3 and rising 1 and running 3. Positive, leaning to the right. The y is already on the left-hand side, so I pick up the x and move it over. It was positive, it's now negative. Then I divide by the coefficient in front of y. Y is equal to -3x plus 4. So I start at +4, put a 1 under here, so it says drop 3, and go right 1. I'm leaning to the left, and that's the way I want to lean. Kind of missed that dot. The y is on the left. You pick it up and move it over. So now it's negative plus 0 if you want the 0. If not, don't even put it in there. Divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Y is equal to -3 7/3 x plus 0. So I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to drop 7. And I'm going to go right 3. I'm leaning to the left. That's what I want to do. Lean to the left because I have a negative slope. Now, there are three types of lines, three forms of lines that we're going to be talking about, and you're responsible to know. This is standard form. It's ax plus by equals c. Okay, I see it as a very formal way of putting a line. You can't do a lot with it in this form, but it's the formal way of placing the line. This is your slope-intercept form. y equals mx plus b. This is the graphing form. This is used mostly for graphing, and it makes your graphing easy, like I just showed you up there. It gives you your y-intercept to your starting point, and it tells you how many rise and run. This form is your point slope form. It's used mostly to get to one of the other two forms. Okay, and we are going to be using it to get to one of the other two forms. Okay, so if you're given a slope and a point, you go to point slope form. That's why it's called point slope form. Okay, in the point slope form, the m is the slope. So this is your slope. y1 is your y coordinate of your point. x1 is your x coordinate of your point. They're the things that you're going to fill in. So a lot of times you're going to see me write y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank, because they're the three blanks I need to fill in. My y coordinate of the point, my slope, and the x coordinate of the point. And from there I can change to standard form or slope-intercept form, depending upon which way I want to go. Okay, so I have a point and a slope, so I'm going to write y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. Here's my x1, my y1, and my slope. The slope goes here. My y1 goes here with the y, and my x1 goes here, so if it's negative 2 becomes positive 2. I distribute. Okay, so this is my point slope formula. Now, at this point, after I distribute, I can go two ways. I can go to slope-intercept, and that's my graphing formula. To do that, I just move over the 5, and I get y equals 3x plus 11. I can go to standard. For standard form, if I had y minus 5 equals 3x plus 6, I'd move the 3x over, get negative 3x plus y minus 5 equals 6, and move the 5 over. Negative 3x plus y equals 11. Now the problem with standard form, besides its more steps, is the fact that you do not like, standard form does not like negatives in the first coefficient, and it does not like fractions or decimals. So I'm going to have to divide by negative 1 and get 3x minus y equals negative 11 for my standard form. So standard is a little bit more work, but if you're asked for standard, you have to know how to put it in. It's your x's, your y's, your equals, your constant. Okay, let's try another one. Y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. 1/3 is my slope. Here's my x1 and my y1, so 3 goes here and negative 4 goes here. Y plus 4 is equal to 1/3 x minus 1. For slope-intercept form, I move the 4 over and I go y equals 1/3 x minus 5. If I want standard form, and I can go from here to get standard form, first thing I would do is lose the fraction with a 3, so I get 3y equals x minus 15. I move my x over, negative x plus 3y equals negative 15, and divide by negative 1. X minus 3y equals 15. Standard, slope-intercept. Now, on the next one, we need to go back to some of the knowledge that I already gave you in the fact that anything that has a slope of 0 is a horizontal line. Now, I can still use y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank to figure this out. I can put in my 4 and my negative 2 and my 0 and get y plus 2 equals 0x minus 0, so 0. Y is equal to negative 2. Now, that is both the standard form and the slope-intercept form. But it's better to understand that when you see that it has a slope of 0, that you're going to have a horizontal line. And the horizontal line is always in the form of y equals b. So y equals whatever y coordinate you have, negative 2. So you could have gotten it without having to go through all that. Now, if you have to go through all that, that's fine. But the problem is going to be on the next one when we have an undefined slope. We cannot use y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. We cannot use that form because you can't put an undefined slope in and distribute it. So you have to know that this is a vertical line as soon as you see the undefined slope, and know that it's in the form of x equals something. And your x equals 3, so your line is going to be x equals 3. It's something you just have to know for that one because there's no other way around it. A company found that by pricing a Frisbee at $6, sales would reach 2,000 Frisbees per day. Raising the price to $8, sales would fall to 1,500 Frisbees per day. Find and predict the equation for the sales and what would happen if the Frisbee was sold for $7.50. Well, I've got 2 points here. $6 gives me 2,000 Frisbees, and $8 gives me 1,500 Frisbees. So x1, y1, x2, y2. First thing I have to do is find a slope. So I have 1,500 minus 2,000 over 8 minus 6. That gives me 500 over 2, negative 500 over 2, which gives me negative 250. Now that I have a slope, I have an m of negative 250. I have 2 points. I have 6, 2,000, and 8, 1,500. I can use either points in my equation. It doesn't matter which one I use because they're both going to come out as the same answer. So I'm going to put my negative 250 in, and I'm going to use the 6, 2,000. So 6, 2,000. So y minus 2,000 is equal to negative 250x plus negative 250 times negative 6. 1,500. Move my 2,000 over. Y is equal to negative 250x plus 3,500. There is my equation. So if I have 2 points, what I do first is I find the slope, then I use the slope and one of the points in the point-slope formula, and I solve for y. So I found the equation, but that was only part of my question. Now I need to know how much it would cost if I sold for $7.50. So I have to do y equals negative 250 times $7.50 plus 3,500. So negative 250 times $7.50 plus 3,500. Y would be 1,625 Frisbees. Here's my second question. So make sure you answer both questions. So let's practice this concept again. x1, y1, x2, y2. Slope. Negative 2 minus 2 over negative 3 minus negative 3. Add line, add line, add line, add line. Negative 4 over 0. Negative 4 over 0 is undefined. That means I have a vertical line of x equals whatever my x's are, and see they match. Negative 3. x1, y1, x2, y2. 9 minus 3 over 4 minus 1. 6 over 3. 2. Y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. Put in my 2. Pick one of the 2 points. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to pick 3, 1 because it's just smaller numbers. Y minus 3 equals 2x minus 2. Move the 3. Y is equal to 2x plus 1. Just one more step. x1, y1, x2, y2. 2 minus 4 over 2 minus negative 2. Change, 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 change. Negative 2 over 4. Negative 1/2. Y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. Put in my negative 1/2. I'm going to use the 2 this time. Y minus 2 equals negative 1/2 x, and negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 1. Move the 2. y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. So the point slope formula is very useful in the fact that you can then take it and use your point and your slope and get it into y equals mx plus b form. Now, there are parallel and perpendicular lines. Parallel lines have the same slope, and they never get closer, which means that if I know I have a line that has a that's parallel to another line and my slope is 3/4, the other line's slope is 3/4. It's important that you know that. And perpendicular lines, they cross at 90-degree angles. They have opposite reciprocal slopes, meaning that if my line is perpendicular to your line and my line is positive, your line is negative. That's your opposite. If mine is 3/4, yours is 4/3. So mine is positive 3/4, yours is negative 4/3. Anything that is not the same slope or are not opposite reciprocals are intersecting lines, but they're not perpendicular lines. So, starting here, easy enough. Slope is right there. So 4, negative 4. Are they the same? No. So they're not parallel. Are they opposites? Yep. Are they opposite reciprocals? No. So they're not perpendicular. So they are neither, which means they're just intersecting. Let's go to the next one. Slope. Really easy. Right there. 2/3. Slope. Negative 3/2. Are they the same? Nope. So they're not parallel. Are they opposites? Yes. Are they reciprocals? Yes. Therefore, they're perpendicular, meaning that they will cross at 90-degree angles. Now, the reason I skipped the first two is because they're not in y equals mx plus b form, so it's going to be harder for me to find the slope. Now, there is an equation that's on your formula sheet that helps you do it easier, and it says that if you're in standard form, which we are, to find slope, you can use negative a over b. So my a here is 4 and my b is 1, so negative 4 over 1. My a is 6, my b is 2, so negative 6 over 2. This gives me a slope of negative 4, that gives me a slope of negative 3. Do they match? No. So they're not parallel. Are they opposites? No, and they're not reciprocals. So these are neither, they're intersecting. This makes it so much easier than have to move everything and find y equals mx plus b and then find your slope. Okay, so negative a, so I have a negative negative 3, a negative negative 3 over 2, which is 3 over 2. That's my slope for the first one. Then I have a negative 6 over a negative 4, which is 3 over 2. Do they match? Yes, they're parallel. Now remember, I told you I put this formula on your formula sheet. If you don't have a formula sheet, then this is the one that you want to take note of because it makes your life so much easier to find a slope in standard form. Now, we're going to use this information to find parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, we have a point x1, y1. Okay, we do not have a slope, so the first thing we have to do is find a slope. So I'm going to use negative a over b because it's in standard form. So negative 2 over 5 is my slope. So my parallel slope will still be negative 2 over 5. My perpendicular slope, this is the sign for perpendicular, will be not negative but positive, and not 2 over 5 but 5 over 2. So now I found the slopes I'm going to use. So for my parallel, I'm going to do y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. I'm going to put in my slope of negative 2/5 because it says my parallel lines will have negative 2/5 as a slope. And I'm going to put in my point, 4, negative 1. So y plus 1 equals negative 2/5 x plus 8/5. Move my 1. Y is equal to negative 2/5 x, and 8/5 minus 1 is the same thing as 8/5 minus 5/5, which is 3/5. You need to use your calculator. So y equals negative 2/5 x plus 3/5 will be parallel to this line that goes through, will not be this line, I'm very sorry, be parallel going through this point. Now, perpendicular. Y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. This is my perpendicular. But this time I'm going to use the slope 5/2 because that's the slope of the perpendicular line. I'm still going to put in the 4 and the -1, and I get y plus 1 equals 5/2 x minus 10. Move my 1. I get y equals 5/2 x minus 11. There's my perpendicular that goes through this point to this line. So we're going to be using the same information. You just need to be able to figure out what the slope is using the line that you're given. Now it's your turn to practice.